Today, as a result of a customer experience, we are explaining the differences between Kawai's GL grand pianos and GX series grand pianos. Stick around. Hi, this is Ted Barsula with Alamo Piano Galleries. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions or comments regarding the pianos or keyboards in this video or any others, go ahead and list them on here. We like to interact with you. And also, suggested ideas. We've had a lot of our video ideas come up from customer experience, either on the phone or in person. And sometimes just a matter of us looking for the answer to what appears to be a simple question. And then you find out, you check the details, there's no real simple answer. So starting with that, again, Alamo Piano Galleries, you can go there and take a look at all of our inventory that we have available online. And we have a lot more pianos in our warehouse and online than we do here in this location, but we always encourage people to come in and play. With that, I want to focus on this idea for a video came up from a customer experience where they were actually comparing a GX series piano to a GL. And this is both their first piano, and they're both semi-retired, and it was kind of like none other than an adult interest purchase and something for their home. So they started asking some questions because sometimes you get a piano that may be a year or two used or old or already sold and returned, exchanged for a bigger, better one. And so we have some inventory that's priced a little different. And they start comparing new prices to this slightly not new because it's been sold once. Where there's still active warranty and all that. So some of the questions that come up is what really are the differences between the entry-line GL grand pianos manufactured by Kawai and their professional intermediate grade, the GX series. Now, for purposes of conversation, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the Shiguru Kawai line because those are kind of like elite type of instruments. They're tier one in a world stage market. So they're excellent pianos and they are fully professional instruments, conservatory grade, auditorium performance, top of the line. The GX series I still consider it Kawai's professional grade and intermediate grade. They're very, very good pianos, and I rank them as well as I do with any other major piano manufacturer. So starting with the differences, we've kind of focused in on this because the customer is really trying to boil it down to what are you really getting for your money here and what are you getting for your money over here, and is it really a weighable difference? And I did a series of videos that were comparing the GX to the SK, and that series, from what I remember, was really close, and it comes down to a personal justification for you, the consumer or customer. Is it worth the extra money? And so in this instance, we're just going to point out 5 differences here between the GL and the GX line, and that's up to everyone's individual preference, whether it's, hey, money well spent or I'll never notice the difference. And there is a lot of truth in both of those things. So first things first, I want to talk about the rim thickness because this is the foundational core and strength of the piano. Everything is tied into that rim. And rims on grand pianos have very distinctive shape, which is what people are looking for, a grand piano-shaped object. And to start off with, the GLs this is no other way to explain it than this, the rim differences. This is a GL series piano, and how thick its rim is right at the 90-degree point, right there at the edge, from here to right there. And then the same thing on the GX series, and it runs almost like 3/8 or a 1/4 inch longer. And then when you take that same line and you put it onto an SK, you can see that it's about another 1/4 inch wider. So you have different materials going into the rims and different thicknesses of the rims. And granted, as you go up in size, the prices go up because the materials start to change, starting with the rim. You're going to have a higher grade selection of lumbers are going to go into the SK series, then the GX, and the GL, which is their entry line grand piano series. So the rim differences are obvious. I measured them out, and that's an obvious given. The next one, number 2, is the key length. There's longer key length as you go from GL to GX to SK, and not all key lengths are created equal. This was an interesting study because I still didn't really get the exact measurements, even though I did get the most professional opinion you can get from Dan Menuno, retired Kawai piano technician who could teach me everything he knows, but not in 2 lifetimes. It's not because I'm a slow learner. The guy knows a lot. Here's the bottom line. He didn't know the measurements of the key lengths right off the top of his head, but there are some models that have the same key lengths. And this is really, really kind of curious because this is what I really enjoyed. The GL10 and the GL20 have almost identical, close to it, but not quite, key lengths. The GL30 and the GX1 have the same key lengths. Now, those are 2 different pianos with the same, 2 different series of pianos with the same key length. This is where it gets interesting. The next key length up is GL40, GL50, GX2, GX3, GX5, SK2, SK3, and SK5 all have the same key lengths. And that's going to be with the SK5, 3, and 2 are going to match, but it says all of these have the same key lengths, which is kind of interesting. And even though the key lengths may be the same length, they are made out of different materials. The higher grade up you go in the line of grand pianos, the more costly and more precision type the lumber is going to be for the key lengths. Now, the longest key lengths they make are on the GX6, GX7, SK6, and SK7. They all have the same key lengths. Even though they all have the same key lengths on those pianos that are similar, they're not going to play the same because of the differences in the materials. The advantage of having a longer key length is that the pivot point where the key rocks back and forth is farther away from your fingertips. The farther away, the more solid and control, and also they also put longer key buttons on there to maintain stability. So there's a lot of differences in the key length, and they're all mixed up between the entry line, the professional grade piano, and also their elite piano, the SKs. But they're all similarly fashioned along the same type of length. Another difference comes in, and this is a matter of selection, and it's soundboard. That's number 3. The soundboard materials are going to be similar. They're all going to be spruce, but there is a difference in the quality of the spruce. And, of course, with the higher detailed and higher quality soundboards going into the SKs, then the GX and the GLs. So the soundboard is another difference that you're going to see something. They use better spruce in the better pianos. There's another difference in the bracing, and the bracing is kind of important because you can see it just by looking up underneath the piano. On the smaller pianos, you have smaller brace, and you may only have 2 bracings in there against the rim into the center. And on the GXs and SKs, you may have 3, where other models may have 2. As the piano gets bigger, so do the bracing, and the bracing patterns are different based on the size of the piano. And last but not least, the one thing that is different on the pianos are the key tops. The GX series has the Neotex upgraded both on the white and black keys to simulate ebony and ivory, and they have some really cool little groove marks in there. It is made out of a porous type material. It is absorbent, and they're a little bit more comfortable and different feeling than the GL keys, which you get, and those are going to be just the standard. I don't want to use plastic. I'm sure they have a better phrase for it, but essentially all of these fancy phrases are some kind of remanufactured, refabricated, or new age types of plastics, which are actually as strong as, in some instances, steel. So with that, those are the 5 differences. Now, here's a strange thing. We're going to go and listen to these, and I have to say, make sure you listen to the tonal differences of the piano and not the tonal differences of the guy playing it, because these instruments do affect you differently and they do make you play on them differently. Let's have a listen. As we come out of the listening, I reminded myself, I forgot to mention that you are listening to a GL40 and a GX2 being compared to each other. And the point is to focus on the tonal differences. And part of it is how the instrument is perceived by the player. Comes down to a lot of these little things like nicer key tops, heavier grade lumbers, not just in the wood or soundboard, but also in the key material. And there's also something else that I did not mention about the GX series that is a little different than the GL series. The GL series uses maple hammerheads, and on the GX series, they use this nice, wonderful mahogany hammerheads. And so there is a difference between the type of hammer component that's being used. What that does to the swing weight, swing weight and how much it affects the action is going to be dependent upon how the thing is adjusted. And just because the actions may be the same key length doesn't mean they're going to play and respond the same. Different materials feel different under everyone's fingers. Some people notice the most smallest things where there is a difference, and other people notice things where there doesn't seem to be much of a difference other than the manner in which something is manufactured, but it does change the end result. And I'm a firm believer that no matter if two things play identical, and one of them is in a 7-foot string and the other one's in a 4-foot string, you're going to feel the difference, whether it's true or not, inside your response as a player. And so if you haven't been able to compare a series of piano types like the GL series from Kawai and the GX series from Kawai, or maybe even compare some of those to other competitors' brands or even the SK brand, to try to find out how pianos that may have similar stats in terms of length and all this other kind of things, length and hammer and wool and types and all that, are going to play and sound so different. And when the science of manufacturing a piano is as precise as it is using carbon fiber components and all of the hand details that are set up in Shigeru Kawai pianos, and see how that flows down to the GX and the GL series. There's some really interesting comparisons to make, but the bottom line comes down to, is it worth it to you as a musician, pianist, player, student, teacher, regardless of your position? Are you able to accurately weigh the differences between one model and another model, or a series against another, and accurately get a fairly good idea of why there are price differences when it really comes down to just upgrading materials? And a lot of it is selection of materials, but it boils down to personal preference, ultimately personal preference of the end user, which is generally the payer and the purchaser. And that means you. If we have any other information we can give you, if you want to continue this conversation about the differences between GX and GL, I know I didn't cover all of them. I covered some of the big ones. And with that, we will be looking forward to seeing you next time here at Alamo Piano Galleries. Thank you so much for your time and attention.